Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to a podcast which is all about the Irish League, where Boxing Day 2024 is now in the books. We'll be diving in for second helpings of analysis as we recap all of the incidents and goals which led up the biggest game week of the season. It was stalemate in the Bell Classico, but should a red card been flashed at Walsh for his obstruction of Jenkins, the Offord-Stewart connection was on fire in North Belfast to put a sour taste in Reds fans' mouths, and Glenalvon get the better of high-flying Ports in mid-Ulster. We'll also look ahead to the final games of the calendar year in your very special festive edition of Kicking Match. Hello, and are we still saying Merry Christmas to fellow Irish League podcaster Mark McGuiggan?
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We're sort of in that whole horrible
very much
section.
You double up. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that type of stuff. We start this podcast with a key question I asked the people that listened to the last podcast, and I just want to have your defining answer on this. Which is the best Christmas chocolate box? Is it Quality Street, Roses, Celebrations, or Heroes? I think your generational position really defines the answer to this question.
Heroes, no doubt. Heroes, yeah, 100%.
Unfortunately, Celebrations is currently winning out with 50% of the vote. And if you want to listen back and vote to that podcast where we talked about all of the January transfer window, you can do that now, of course. But Mark, the thing we're going to talk about on this little special edition of the podcast, it's the Boxing Day games, and what a selection box they were. You're at the Oval watching your beloved Blues, and that very much was the epicenter of much of the talk and much of the drama, I would say.
Yeah, lots of talk and lots of drama, but not too many chances, not too many goals. As everybody knows, 2 red cards, maybe should have been a third, who knows? Declan Devine certainly thinks there was a third red in there. Not so sure. I was sort of about 100 yards behind it, so I can't make a decision. But replay-wise, I'm not sure again.
There's definitely a Christmas card pun in there somewhere with everybody being on Shane Andrews' list, except, of course, David Walsh of Linfield. You're totally right. Chances weren't aplenty, but all of the other things surrounding the game it was a sellout there. There was actually a number of games that were sold out across the day, and it was very much a match that Linfield didn't need to win as long as they just didn't lose it, and they kept accumulating points with Lorne as far back as they are, slightly nipping at their heels, or at least metaphorically are at this stage. You stood firm, you didn't let Glens get the goal even though they had a fair bit of chances. Is this a case to say missing Matthew Fitzpatrick might be a bigger deal than people might think?
Yeah, I was saying that to a couple of people yesterday. It shows actually how important Fitzpatrick is to yourselves. We had McKee or Cooper in the middle yesterday. I'm not 100% sure who was in the middle. I don't think David Healy knew who was in the middle, being that hold-up player. But it is extremely difficult, as we all know, to have a hold-up player that's under 6 foot tall against 2 rather large centre halves. Didn't really work for McKee or Cooper yesterday. But I think we were really missing Fitzpatrick yesterday. He's a key player for us, and certainly that aspect of the team. He might not get all these goals that previous Linfield strikers would have had. You know, your Andy Waterworths, your Glenn Ferguson's, Peter Thompson's. The list goes on. But he does hold the ball up. He creates play. He just manages to carry Linfield in some certain situations. But listen, missed him yesterday. I'd also say we missed Ben Hall yesterday. We sort of had 4 centre halves playing across the back 4 yesterday. But listen, a draw's a draw. I was happy enough for that. As you said, it was a sort of must not lose game for Linfield, considering how poor the performances against the Glens have been this season.
Did it feel different compared to the other fixtures? I appreciate Glentoran have beat the Blues 3 different ways across the fixtures, but this was one which I felt was always going to be tetchy for a majority of it, and then maybe late on we were going to see a defining goal a la the Vertinen game, but in the end that moment of Walsh taking down Jordan Jenkins as he rushed towards him outside the box seemed to be the defining moment. A yellow card was handed out to Walsh, to the chagrin of a majority of those who were in the Oval. We'll talk about a very similar incident in another game, but when we're trying to analyze what happened there, if you think it was a red card, you're saying, well, Jenkins was on through, and if it wasn't for the fact that Walsh either took him out or had a touch that brought him down, it would have been one-on-one on goal, last man, etc. It's straight off. The other argument, which seems to be, and what Shane Andrews was making his assessment around, was two Linfield players around him might have not been directly in front of him, but were to either side. That would be somewhat cover, and if you take Walsh out and make that a defender, is it a red card? I'm slightly torn, but I totally appreciate it. If you are of the Glentoran persuasion, that is a red all day, every day.
I can see where the Glens are coming from. Like if that was GLI emptying Joel Cooper, I'd be on here advocating for like a red card and a 5 game ban and a stadium ban, all this sort of thing. But I'm kind of looking at it from a neutral point of view to say that it seems yellow. It seems yellow for that collision. I've seen footage from behind the goal, the other goal, from where I was standing anyway. The contact seems minimal, which is maybe a reason why he's gone
Mm-hmm.
yellow. And I think for another, as you said, there the two defenders sort of converging on him might have covered us there. But certainly not pretty. I'll argue with that. It's a heart and mouth moment when you can see it from the other end of the stadium. But as you said there, just sort of previously, I'll go back to performance wise against the Glens this year, we just haven't got going. I think we've played what you're looking at 4 games against the Glens, so that's 8 halves of football. We've only turned up for one, and that was at the home game at Windsor. The first half of that game, we blew them away. Should have been 3-4 up at half time, and then came back and they, thumped us 3-1. But it just felt like the Glens they seemed to have our number. It seems psychological. Um, and there's no real way of getting around it. We just can't seem to beat them this year.
Outside of that big call by the referee, I think this game highlights what is Glentoran's main issue, and that is that they just don't have that killer instinct of a striker this term. They have interesting attacking players in Jenkins. Always looks dangerous on the ball. Dylan pushing forward from the other side, but between Fisher, Donnelly, and Jenkins, he hasn't been played centrally a whole lot. They don't have that player that's going to nick a goal out of nowhere. They're short on goals, particularly at home, and you've got to think not only on this day but other days where they would be if they just had you steal him somewhere else and offered in this side, because broadly they're sturdy enough at the back. Midfield kind of can stop attacks on the other side. It's a lot of bluster at the top and a whole lack of thunder.
This new striker coming on, Wasim Achira. I'm not 100% sure in the pronunciation. My French is as good as my English. So like he comes on and he's a sort of classic striker, a sort of big, tall fella with a bit of pace. And there was no real sort of there was no end product from him. And I think that's where they're going to struggle across that front three, as you say, where the goals coming from. Because Donnelly's not firing as he was. Jenkins, a very, very good. I hate to say this, for someone who can't play football at all here, as in me, he's a very good mid-table Irish League striker. He would look excellent in, say, a Ballymena United or potentially, I don't know, a Glenavon team where he would be the star of the show, but he just doesn't seem to be good enough to cut it out in the big moments for the Glens. They just looked devoid of ideas going forward yesterday, even against the 10 men in infield. They just didn't seem to be much of an attacking threat either on the wings or through the middle.
And I think we're still in that phase where Declan Devine is still trying to craft up a side in his image with bits and pieces that he perhaps didn't bring in, or fact she just didn't bring in, and he's starting to see what works and what doesn't, and you're starting to see fruit in regards to what he has brought to the club. And obviously that big deal that he got a number of weeks ago is the board saying go out, make it happen, and it's almost giving that back, and so the players can trust this is the man who is going to take us into this next era. This season has been really strange for the Blues because they've been leading the way for a long time, forgetting the Lorne position in the table far down how many games that they've still got to play. With the teams that are up near the top of the table, it's a big lead that you have. Despite the fact that most Linfield fans feel frustrated and are annoyed that this team kind of feels out of sorts. I watched a bit of that game against Dungannon, and I felt as though Dungannon were putting it up to you, controlled the ball. Linfield were struggling to get out of it, and Cooper was the man that was the answer. I think you've got a big game on Monday that could be a season-defining matchup. Is it the same feeling within the fan base that this could either be the thing that rubber stamps where you are or cracks open the door for Lauren to make the season end in tears?
I think it's certainly a game where you're looking at both teams are really desiring this game for hope. That's the way I'm looking at it. Larne have had this whole sort of, as we know, stop-start season. Every 3 weeks they're having to postpone a game and having to go and flip and play in Azerbaijan or something. Like it's totally unfair to say Linfield will win this title when Larne have so many games in hand. Larne have been the thorn in Linfield's side so many times across the last 2, even 3 or 4 years when the Blues were winning the league. They were still struggling to play against and beat Larne. This is a team that David Healy again has struggled to play against and has struggled to actually build momentum against. There's glimmers of hope. A draw here, the odd win there, and even this year, the game at Windsor, we really should have won that. The game at Inver, I think, was possibly our best performance of the season. We looked absolutely excellent that night and deserved the win, I think, across the 90 minutes that night. But I think for Linfield, if they don't win this one on Monday night, it's sort of the fear sets in and they're going, oh my goodness, Larner coming, Larner coming. But if we win, you're sort of like you've pushed them down the road far enough, sort of thing, that they're out of sight, out of mind. That's if it's a win, that's 6 points out of 9 against Larne, which is something we haven't done in a very long time. I think from a Larne perspective, they see this as their sort of litmus test. Have we still got it? Are we actually as bad as what the points say? Or is this just sort of this whole European hangover thing that everybody keeps chatting about? It's a big game on Monday night.
There's 6 games between you. Larne have played 16 games. Linfield have played 22. There is that many points between you, 22. The 6 games in hand times by 3, 18 points. They're 4 points behind you minimum, based on that, which feels tight, I guess. But I would very much doubt that you can count all of those 6 games as wins. Let us be proven wrong, just simply based on the fact that they have got to play so many, whatever it's going to be, Friday, Tuesday. Feels, how long ago was the last long game on a Friday? I completely forgot about that. Friday, Tuesday games and who's going to come in January. It feels like a big ask, but you're right. What happens on Monday could be a real tone setter for how that goes. Let's actually go to the game between Larne and Carrick. 3 goals for Larne, chalked off, and I will talk about every single one of them. That is a big 2 points dropped by Larne, particularly at home against Carrick. I think Carrick are a tough side for Larne because Larne have to go in and try and break down this big, mean back line of Carrick. They're very much happy to deal with the low block, and that makes it difficult for Larne unless they can squeeze out the goal, which they tried to do. Starting with the first one, Bolger coming from the corner, header at the back post. I feel like this is the most nuanced goal of the lot. It took me once or twice to really figure out what happened there. It seems to have been a foul on a player. Was it a defender? Was it maybe Andy Ryan getting tangled up with someone essentially in the box? Out of the three, that is the closest that I would say probably should have been a goal. But I understand if the referee saw something, it gets blown up. These things happen, perhaps.
Uh, I think it happens in every single corner box in every single game. There's games where you look at, pushing and shoving in the box where somebody breaks through and maybe climbs on top of someone, scores a header, and it's not given. But it was more the fact that Ryan wasn't actually the player that scored the goal. Even from Gary Haven's point of view, that like he said that he's been told that it was Andy Ryan pushed somebody in the box, and you're just going, that's totally soft. If I was a Lauren fan, I'd be absolutely fuming with that one. Out of, as you say, out of all three, this seems the one that was the most sort of clear-cut goal out of the three. That was maybe really, really soft to be given. Again, it's a referee's decision. You can't go back on it. And as you say again, Carrick are happy enough to sort of play that 10 men behind the ball. You would do it yourself, 100%.
Football doesn't work this way, but if that was the third of the three, if that happened in the 85th minute, I think there would be a very different feel, and it's a different kind of pressure cooker situation for the linesman to make the call. The second of the three, Lusty, ball comes in. Is it Ryan who knocks it on? And then Lusty hits it in at the near post. That was an offside call. Close, but I appreciate no camera angle I'm going to see is going to tell me one way or the other. Didn't look concrete, and in this new world of offsides, a finger or a trailing leg can give it away at the right time. So those will go against you on numerous occasions.
Yeah, one of those ones sort of where you're looking at it from the linesman's point of view. If he gives it, he's the best man in Carrick. He does give it, so he's the worst man in Larne sort of thing. It's a 50-50 call. But again, I can see the frustration when you've already had one chalked off to have the second chalked off. I can see where Haveron's very, very angry with that. But 50-50 calls.
It's one of those where if I was talking about reds and yellows, you'd probably say, you're giving the referee a decision to make, and I appreciate going for goal doesn't work this way, but he was just so close to that line of the last man defender. It does make it difficult for the referee to go one way or the other. Look, that's the call, and away we go. Most clear cut one for me is the third one. Andy Ryan, he is offside in my eyes. Bolger heads the ball in. Glendenning saves it, and then it needs Ryan to come in and knock it. And my favourite thing about this in the highlights is the big nod from the linesman. Sometimes you see people on the line with the flag and they sit there as a statue. I appreciated the flag and like the nod saying, you were.
Yes, you were, naughty boy. That was sort of how it looked for me. He was very, very definite in telling him,
He
yes, you were.
was.
You know you were. You know you were. And he's standing like flipping arms folded into the crowd as if he's Cole Palmer or something. But yeah, I think that one, it's more the case of the three adding up is what's sort of right here. Three in one game's a tough one to take. But I mean, I don't think you can look back at that one specifically and say, we should have had that one.
This is a team who comes off that game with Dungannon on Monday with 3 points, and one moment that will stand out to me is that big dig from Donnelly from far out, which seals right onto the crossbar and out. Between those three chances and that big whopper of a hit from Donnelly, none of them nestle in the back of the net. And I appreciate this is not how leagues go, but you've got to feel like if this is going to be some sort of triumphant comeback from Larne to come and win the title this year, they would need to be winning games like this. Things that are slightly on the knife edge to go one way or the other. Oftentimes, champions fall on the right side of this, and on Boxing Day, they just didn't.
Yeah, I agree. That whole sort of, going one way or another. You look at one game in particular last year, for me, where Larne sort of got that whole sort of luck of champions sort of thing. Now, I'm not saying that Larne didn't deserve to be league champions last year, but the one game that sort of screamed that Larne are going to win this title was the evening where Linfield conceded late on against Coleraine,
Mhm.
and then in and around the same time, Larne scored. to get that whole point sway, and that's where you win a league title. Linfield yesterday were rather poor and got away with a draw, whereas Larne were rather good against Carrick, comparatively, but only escaped with the same amount of points. So that's where Linfield can be looking at this thing, and we might just get away with this year.
On the other side, they do get 3 points against Dungannon, and I'll perhaps touch upon it more when we chat about Dungannon. But they were 2 games at home against Linfield and Larne, and they were rightfully disappointed to get nothing out of them because they had the energy, they had the fortitude, they had everything you want to see from a team where they controlled large periods of the game. They just didn't have the goals to get them through. So Lauren did that, and they got a big 3 points at Stagmore, just missed out on getting 3 at home. Another game that had plenty of drama to it. It was at the time second in the league against second bottom. That's not the case anymore. Glenavon winning out 2-0 against the rivals in Mid Ulster, Portadown. I was at this game, a real fiery affair. It's exactly what you would expect from a matchup like this. No love lost. I'm very surprised that we didn't see a wee collection of yellows occur and a red card. We did eventually see a red card later on, and I guess we should probably maybe start there. Very similar to the Walsh incident, except as you talked to me before we got recording here, perhaps the amount of contact played a role into it, and I thought there was 2 players around him. But again, we say this time and time again when we look back at football games, you're giving a referee decision to make.
Yeah, I think it was maybe he sort of clatters him. It's more of a clattering challenge than Walsh's was a sort of lighter trip. Do you know what? I'm not trying to sound waffly here. I'm trying to back up my own goalkeeper sort of thing, but it was just sort of clattering into him, is the sort of Mid Ulster way of saying it, I suppose. He absolutely clattered into him, and he's given as you said, Peter, like he's given the referee a decision to make, and again, if he sends him off, he's in Glenavon's good books. If he doesn't, he's in Portadown's good books, sort of thing. Uh, silly one to make. I don't know whether he needed to do it, but listen, it's McCary. There's sometimes a little bit of a hot head in there. Could we say that sometimes? We've seen it a few times, maybe more than often for some goalkeepers.
He dives in, of course, there's all this question marks about was he even going to play in this game, and the appeal for that disciplinary action by the IFA is yet to be heard, which means he was able to play the game on Saturday. He'll not be playing the game on Monday, but let's give Glenavon flowers here because I think they deserve it. They've had a tough go of things. Paddy McLaughlin comes in mid-November, and his first game that he had was against Portadown at Shamrock Park. I was actually at that game as well, and I thought based on that game that Glenavon looked like a really bad matchup for Portadown. Now, Ports get the points on that occasion, but I thought Glenavon was really in control of a lot of the play in that matchup, and that very much is what I saw on Boxing Day as well. Portadown started brightly, really could have caught Glenavon a number of times on the break if they were just better on the ball, but Glenavon looked more control in midfield. Their passing was more precise. O'Connor had one of the best games I've seen him play. He was winning everything against Doogie Wilson. That was a platform that Glenavon was able to then get balls out to Toure or Sullivan or Atherton or Peter Campbell, and that, I don't know if you see it in the highlights, but I'm pretty sure a wind in the air brought the ball down. It's then played to then O'Sullivan eventually charges into the box. Peter Campbell's about there, and I thought the first goal was a really nice sweeping move. Glenavon kept the pressure on in the first half, aren't able to get the second goal. There's a claim for handball, and then in the second half it's a dull affair until Portadown then are strangely given a bit more time on the ball in that second half, but they just didn't have with UKEC, who was not having a great day. Portadown getting James Thielen is a great move for them because, my goodness, they really needed someone like that could have stretched the play or maybe just added something different up top. Portadown, huff and puff, try and get the goal. It totally flips the other end. I think it's maybe 3-on-3 at that point. As O'Connor gets played in, McCarry takes him out, and Niall Quinn does what Niall Quinn does, the real bit of quality in that game. Free kick, seals the deal, seals the points, and the blue half of Mid-Ulster was loving it.
Yeah, a very iconic goal, I think, from Niall Quinn. Very, very late. And sort of, it's one of those ones when you watch it back, it's the stillness and sort of quiet as he hits it, and it clips in off the post into the other side of the net. Really, really nice finish. Considering how much pressure was on in that game, you know, you make a mistake there and Portadown break away, the whole thing's up in the air. But a really, really nice finish from Niall Quinn.
We've talked about goalkeeper Oscars on this podcast before. Jimmy Ray with a very understated, just dumbfounded look at the post as it knocks into his goal. He's a statue in there, and just adds to the drama of that. Glenavon were excellent, and I think Paddy McLaughlin, he's come in and he said he's adding more training sessions. There is good quality, solid players in that team. Do they link up particularly well? I'm not quite sure. They are a couple of players short of pushing on from where they are, because I think inconsistency will knock them out. But on that day, they were well up for it, and they worked well. But they could have actually been caught. If one ball fell differently, Portadown maybe would have got the goal unfairly on what was a total performance from Glenavon. They got a lot of chances, just didn't put them away. Let's talk about the Portadown's point of view. Obviously, if you're from the red half of Mid-Ulster, you'll be disappointed to lose to your rivals. They've got a lot of love on this podcast recently. They were up to second, of course. Broadly, this fan base is still in dreamland, and if you're being really cynical about it, they'll probably take the loss to Glenavon if they can still claim those wins, and they obviously do have those wins against Cliftonville and Crewe, cynically.
If you'd offered a Portadown fan 6 points from those three games, and you hadn't told them which one they were going to lose, they wouldn't have been too worried if the loss was against Glenavon. So, as you said, it is dreamland for Portadown here at the minute. You know that they are really flying high. Um, but another thing as well, you have to remember this is Niall Curry's first season with this particular group of players. You know he's actually managing to perform very, very well against some of the top teams in the league who are full slash hybrid time sort of thing. Um, with sort of players who are part time, which is totally almost impossible to do in some stages. So if I was a Portadown fan, yes, it stinks to lose on Derby Day, but would you be too worried if at the end of the season, you're in the top six and you say, oh, but you lost on Boxing Day? It doesn't really matter, does it? At the end of the day, it feels like a big day on Boxing Day, but you get the same 3 points every week.
It will be very, very interesting, and I think it will tell you that Portadown have continued on their good run, if that is in fact the final Mid-Ulster Derby of the season, because that's now 3 of them in the league wrapped up. So we're looking at you, Irish Cup and/or them both finishing in the bottom 6. We move to North Belfast and Seaview Crusaders against Cliftonville. Neither side in particularly great nick going into this. I think it was like 5th against 7th or something, and a little bright start to the second half. The Kieran Offord show gets the 2 goals and gives Crusaders bragging rights on this occasion. Going from bad to worse for Cliftonville. They're just in a real sticky patch now. That's their 3rd loss in the league in a row.
Yeah, it's just not looking good at the moment for Cliftonville. Couple of 3 tough games when you look at it on paper. Portadown away, Glentoran at home. Obviously aided by some David Odumosu madness, grabbing the win there. But it certainly looked yesterday, as we weren't there, but from what we can see, the better team won down at Stevie on Saturday, and that will be really concerning for Jim Mitchelton.
I thought Jordan Stewart had a really nice game. He had a good showing against Portadown in the highlights. He hit the bar, seemed to really have a good connection with Offord, and that seemed to ignite itself again at the start of that second half. It's Stewart who bursts through, fires in on goal, and Offord is the one to tidy it up, and then the second goal comes a couple of minutes later, and I'm pretty sure it's Stewart who plays the ball into Offord, who slams it home, and the look, Clifton will have their own dynamite striker in Gormley. He isn't having a great time of it recently, but for the Cruise, I was very, very harsh on them last week. They are still seventh, 30 points from 21 games. But if Offord, who runs hot and cold from a goal scoring point of view, can get a partnership with Jordan Stewart, and Jordan Stewart can get a real consistent I'm the main man run, they will get a fair amount of these results. Weirdly, the Crews seem to be better in the big games than the games against Glenavon, Portadown, or Dungannon.
It's maybe that sort of experience that they have across that sort of top end of the table. You're looking at some of the more experienced players in that team, and they're all coming from, league winning infields. You're looking at like Philip Lowry and Jimmy Callagher, and again Jordan Stewart as well. They were experienced in big games, and they were always big game players for Linfield. And even the likes of Johnny Tuffy and stuff, one of the best goalkeepers in the league. But it's just getting that sort of settled quality backline in front of him that might help him out a bit more in those games against smaller sides. But we have to say when we're saying about smaller sides, the smaller sides have been some of the best performance in the league this season, and have been some of the more consistent teams in the league really as well. So we can't sort of knock them back for that all the time. Some really really good performances from the so-called bottom six this year have really really embarrassed some of the bigger boys in the league. But as you say, it just seems to blow hot and cold for Upper. If he can get on this sort of really good goal scoring run coming into January, lots and lots of football to be played in January, of course, starting with some Irish Cup games. Um, Cruz could be looking at a real good push for top six and even maybe that automatic European place.
He has all, for me, the physical traits and the nose for it. He sometimes plays some of the cynical parts of a striker very, very well, which I can imagine is quite frustrating if you're the an opposition fan, because he'll terrify you with his ability to either beat a player or go down in a very tricky area. Going back to Cliftonville, big call for Magilton and Co. to drop Otomosu and put in the young Lewis Rid. We'll have to see if it plays out, if it's a case of just one game, or could this be a move going forward? He's lost his place. This can be seen as a bit of managerial genius if it works out in that Otomosu returns to form, or they find a new starlet in Lewis Rid. It obviously can go very badly if Lewis Rid isn't the man and you've just totally wrecked Otomosu's confidence.
Yeah, I think Otomosu's confidence was knocked massively last week. We've all seen the goals that went in at Solitude last week. Is it going to work? Who knows? Linfield have done it this year. Obviously, dropped their first choice goalkeeper for the so-called understudy. I don't know whether this is going to look so good for Cliftonville. After one bad game, pulling out the main goalkeeper who was he's totally loved by all those at Solitude. I think everybody sort of agreed that he had a pretty poor performance against Glentoran. We'll have to wait and see whether this actually works out for him because, as you say, you've removed the main man. What does that do for your confidence? If you make one mistake, you're out the door, sort of thing. Um, he might be looking at someone like Johnny Addis who made a mistake 2 weeks ago and is straight back into the squad after suspension. So again, it's a waiting game for that. We'll actually have to try and see how that turns out for them. But I think they've maybe knocked his confidence a wee bit too much, but we'll find out.
In the table, it's all super close. Dungannon Swifts have got 36 points, Glentoran on 35 now. Swifts have played 23 games, Glens have played 22, but Port's on 34, 21 played, Cliftonville 3 points behind, 21 played. Ballymena are on 31, 21. Crews are on 30 there in 7th, 21. So as much as there was a decent gap between the Crews and some of the other teams, it all gets a bit tighter now with that big result. Perhaps if you're a fan of Coleraine or Ballymena, you'll be checking your fist in frustration, thinking that you should have had 2 more points to your total, and that would be able to push down you're going to be a big rival for you outside of just being close to you in proximity, but they're going to be a big rivals now when it comes to trying to finish in this top six, because both sides will feel as though they should have won it, could have won it, and the momentum was with Coleraine at the very end. It seemed to be a very, very exciting game, and the biggest headline of all, Ballymena finally drawn a game.
Yeah, finally, broke that duck from finding a draw. Um, I think it's one of those classic football games of a tale of two halves. I don't think I've ever seen Ethan Devine score a back heel like quite like he did just before half time.
That felt like a simulation. That's like, on FIFA when you get Gary Neville or something to do like a bicycle kick. That just
It
felt,
didn't look right. It didn't look right. It
yes.
just looked out of place. His first header, very Ethan Devine goal. Big, strong, uh, forward, as everybody knows. It's almost as if Linfield were looking for one of them yesterday, and their best option was about 70 miles up the road in Coleraine. But anyway, say no more. Bite my tongue on that one. But anyway, yeah, a really solid performance first half from Ballymena by the looks of it. Coleraine going back the ways look very sort of soft and weak sometimes. The ball over the top um before the assist into Divine for the second one. They just sort of look at, at each other as sort of like, oh, are you meant to be there? Or was I meant to be there? But it looks sort of weak going back the ways. Ballymena it definitely looked like they deserved their 2-goal lead in the first half. But second half, Coleraine coming out and absolutely blowing them away. It looked like if it was anybody else in the goal, apart from certain Sean O'Neill, Coleraine would certainly have the bragging rights again on the old A26 derby. O'Neill coming up with some absolute magic left, right, and centre by the looks of it, anyway.
Air 26 Derby, that is not going to catch on. I appreciate I'm the man of silly names for silly derbies, but I'm yet to fully lock in what that is going to be named, because Air 26 Derby,
No,
it
there's no
doesn't
ring
work.
to it. It
No,
doesn't work, but we had to try.
we will try. I will try. Uh, yeah, the one thing we've said about Coleraine at the back is that they're lacking organisation and perhaps a bit of nous. I think the first time Alex Gone waddles down that right hand side and then finds Ethan Devine in the box should have been warning enough. He does it again in the same half, and credit goes to Gone and Devine for that great connection. A lot to be done, and they both do their jobs excellently. It all changes in that second half where Coleraine do what they usually do best, and that is link up well at the top end of the pitch. The first goal isn't particularly pretty, but then they get the penalty 2-2, and from there, they looked like the team that was going to go and get the 3 points. And I mean, if there's one man that Coleraine would have wanted to have had that ball fall to in the 6-yard box with the goal semi-gaping, it would be Shevlin. I'm surprised he just wasn't able to squeeze it past O'Neill in the goal, but that was a big save. It was a first of a trio of big saves from O'Neill, who very much saves the point for Ballymena in this occasion.
Yeah, definitely. As I said, he's one of these goalkeepers who I think he did it. He had a bit of the goalkeeper Oscars as you were talking about for the first goal as he sort of stood and watched it go in, but he really can pull absolute magic out of nowhere. Um, he's a goalkeeper who's never really, you look at Daniel Gielay for the Glens, who looks, big, tall, strapping fella who looks like, hey, oh, that boy's a goalkeeper. Sean O'Neill has never looked either big or strong, but my goodness, he comes off with some absolutely excellent save. I think there was one in the first half. He was involved in trying to clear that off the line as well. But second half, he has really saved Ballymena's skin, and Jim Irvin will be patting him on the back big time.
And they have very much patted him on the back with that contract, so he'll be there as well next term, and he's actually earned Ballymena a fair few whack of points this year, and I think the biggest factor in this game is that neither of them are able to get that little bit of breathing space between them in this battle for top six. We have somewhat a mini league now where we have everyone from, let's say, Larne on 26 points, and they'll be hard to really pinpoint where they truly sit on 26 points in ninth, and then Coleraine 27. I've went through them all, and with some teams having played 21 or 22 games. We've got this stretch of 12 games before the split where games will slowly begin to run out and teams will want to build points up early so they can hang about the area. And for now, Coleraine, Cruise, Ballymena, and let's say Larne are the teams that are on the outside, or at least are looking up at some of the other teams. And could we see Portadown fall off? Do Clifton will need to buck up their ideas? This will be a part of the table which will be fascinating to watch over the next while. But the team on top of this little collection of teams is the Swifts. They may have played one or two games more than some of the sides there, but they've got it in the bank. 36 points they have off the back of losing twice at home against the Blues and against Larne. They come up trumps against Loughgall to just heap more misery onto the league's bottom side. They looked efficient, they looked professional, and they get the job done. 2-1 in the end.
Yeah, I think those are words you could use to describe Dungannon Swifts any week. Efficient and professional. What Roddy McAree has down there, he just it seems to get everybody playing to the very best of their ability in every single position and every aspect of their ability. Really, really good quality. Every time you go down to Dungannon, you're expecting a tough battle, and that is just seemingly what they are proving to be for everybody in the league. You know, 4 or 5 years ago, even 2 or 3 years ago, when Larne and Linfield were going down to Dungannon, it was maybe a case of away fans saying, how many goals do you reckon we're going to get today? But they've proved that they're so sturdy in that midfield and back. Losing by 1 goal to Linfield and 1 goal to Larne, the league leaders and last year's champions. I don't think they could be complaining about that. Now maybe they should have gone on and won those games, but I think Loughgall made them work for it though. From what I can read and what I've watched back, Loughgall fought as they usually do. Loughgall don't just let themselves be beaten before they're there, sort of thing. But couple of good goals I thought from Dungannon actually. Certainly John McGovern's the second goal in that game is an absolutely cracking finish, making light work of a really, really difficult chance. The first one I think Dean Curry's up unmarked for a header. But Dungannon have a way of winning games at the minute, and they certainly deserve to be in the position that they are in the league at the moment.
I am just so impressed by them. I I felt as though I was just firing on clips to the Around the Grounds boys while that long game is going on. Just said, look at their movement and look at their energy. They have, so much has been said about Glennie, but Scott on the other side, and we will talk about him, adds so much as well. They pass, they move, they hassle. Like when Lauren tried to come out of their own box, try and play it out in the way that they do, Dungannon were having none of it. They hassled, they harried, and to have that amount of energy is very, very impressive. Are they perhaps running out of steam in the last 15, 20 minutes? I would argue perhaps, but I just really appreciate how they want to play football, how they truly are able to play out from the back. And oftentimes the thing that they do wrong is by trying to pump it out, is trying to find that out ball up top, because they can just slice through. And against Larne in particular, they should. There was a beautiful ball in from Leo Alves, and McGovern just went inches wide. There probably was a handball shout as well where McGovern was being followed in by two defenders, and the ball just popped up. I think it was off Sean Want's hand, and they, particularly at home, as we've said, look great. And I think if they can keep it up, they should be really. I think they're maybe, the stats probably say this is the truth, but they're maybe only 3 wins away from locking in a top 6 place. This little quadrant of Dylan Knowles, Leo Alves, and Bigorama, they're all somewhat centre midfielders, but they're just able to do the tackling, they're able to do the movement, they're able to do the passing. None of them are really a winger either. I just think if you really sit down and watch a Dungannon game, you'll find so much to be impressed by. Saying that, let's talk about the Stephen Scott miss. It's unbelievable. It's so good.
Amazing, absolutely calamitous. I've just come in from playing, well, say playing, seven aside, and we couldn't even have made that miss happen. I have no idea. I've watched it back, and I think the only sort of thing you can say in his favor is it sort of bobbles after his first touch and sort of hits it in the air a bit, but it's missed this season. I don't think anything will top it.
It
Absolutely
gets
incredible.
it gets the ball three yards out. Let's just say he is pretty much in the center of the goal. There's like no defenders. In fact, it's a defender trying to cover for him. He takes a touch on his left foot. It does pop up, and I mean the entire goal is in front of him, and he lashes it so much that it pops up and goes straight off the
It's
crossbar.
incredible. It's incredible. He's just got so much power in his leg, and he's just decided, I'm just gonna hit this as hard as I can and see what happens.
But
It
we've
was
all
just
thought
so
just leather
embarrassing.
it, just
Just
leather it.
leather. I wish somebody would hit it. You ever been in there's an old penalty box sort of
Yeah.
scuffle, and just if somebody had just hit that, but he's just I don't know. I feel totally scummed for the guy. But listen. They got away with it. I think if you watch that chance and then Lockall go up the other end and score, he's an absolute idiot. But I think he's just sort of happy enough to take, we still got 3 points. We got away with that one really. But yeah, just as you were saying there, Peter, as well. We're looking at top six for Dungannon. You say maybe three more games. Coleraine actually finished last year, obviously, with 38 games with only 46 points. Dungannon have 36 after only 23 games. So, as you say, maybe another three wins and a draw, maybe a little bit more, could cement that into the top six. And that's the dreamland yet again for one of these sort of so-called smaller teams in the league to finish in the top six. Absolutely incredible stuff from them this year.
Monday night, the 30th of December. Goodbye, New Year's Day. It's now all about the second game across this Christmas period. And my goodness, do we have a couple of doozies. None bigger than the meeting between Linfield and Larne. We talked about it earlier. Could this be a title defining fixture? There's no doubt that it will, because it has been over the past number of years. It's at Windsor Park. Larne actually have a decent record down at Windsor Park. They don't mind this big pitch at all, and in fact they've been getting a lot of experience down on that Windsor Park pitch from their European exploits. Some good, some not so good. And it's just hard to tell what kind of shape Larne are in. They still feel like a side that are kind of in an awkward pre-season mode, and I don't know what their strongest side is. I don't know who is really properly going strong and doesn't have the odd bit of a knock here or there. Who their best 11 is, I can tell you their best trio at the back is in Want, Bulger, and Donnelly, but it's going to be a different proposition for them when they go up against the highest scores in the league in Linfield, and I can see your face already, Mark, when I fire out that stat. I think the Blues need Matthew Fitzpatrick back to just link everything up. We'll get on the scores in a bit, but for Larne, I don't think Andy Ryan is at his best at the minute. We haven't really seen him be at his best without Lee Bonus anyway. So, goals, it has been a problem for Larne. It will continue to be a problem for Larne. Does anything about this side from Larne fear you, except the fact that they have done you proper in recent times?
I think that sort of sums it up. Yeah, we have been done proper a couple of times by Lauren. It's sort of every time we play both the Glens and Lauren, I sort of have this feeling that we're preparing a game plan not to lose as opposed to go out and win. That seems to be the idea that's been going on at the minute for us. Now when you go towards a team, you look at Lauren's team. Boxing Day was the first time that Lauren had named an unchanged side all season. For a team that has played so many games, yes, less games in the league, but so many games across European qualifiers and the competition proper. That's really, really good for them to finally be able to name, back to back same 11, get a bit of consistency and confidence in across the board. I think that's maybe something that Haven, will be really really happy with. To be honest, that he's been able to go back to back with teams. Um, but you know, as you say, it's the goals that's one thing that you're not 100% sure where they're going to come from either team. To be honest, with Fitzpatrick out, um, Linfield have maybe lost that sort of outball, that person to carry it up. Now, I believe that his lack of appearance on Boxing Day was due to a virus. It
Hmm.
wasn't anything ridiculous, it wasn't a torn Achilles or nothing really crazy. So we might see him back on Monday evening. I'm not 100% sure, but I guess we'll all have to find out. But the thing that Lauren have that Linfield do not is the element of surprise is one thing that I would say. There's always a scorer from a Lauren team that comes out of nowhere. You look at the first game at Windsor this year, a goal out of absolutely nothing from McKendry. Um, and that's where Lauren can have you. Now, as regards to sort of playing at Windsor as well, obviously Linfield's home ground, but one thing that I would look back to for a bit of positivity for Linfield is looking back to last year's Irish Cup semi-final, Cliftonville against Larne at Windsor. Larne looked really, really poor on that big pitch, and the big pitch actually looked like Cliftonville's positive as opposed to Larne. So, it's going to be a very, very entertaining game, but I don't know where we're going to find any goals from either side, to be honest, at the minute. So, screams sort of a low score draw to me.
And that's exactly what Linfield will take. A draw here is 2 points to Linfield because of the goal difference and because of just how many games Lauren have to play, and just that undoubtable reality that because and their squad people say is big, and yes, it is, and they do have McKendry and Benji McGee and Jordan McAniff to come off, and Dylan Stone to come off the bench, but I'm not naming you 7 players who are game changers that are able to come off the bench. January may be a remedy to that, but that also unsettles your side as well and creates different kind of questions. So Lauren very much need to strike when they have an opportunity, and it would be a massive 3 points for Lauren, because I think with each week going by, you're starting to see a little chinks in their armor and they be worn down, and just that mountain that they have to climb getting bigger and steeper. So there is that difficulty in that Linfield will not want to go out and lose this game by making some rash or silly decision in the same way that they don't want to open themselves up to something like the lusty goal that we saw earlier on this term. However, they can't just sit back and let Lauren come at them, because outside of Cooper and Miller, do really Linfield have someone that can go from one end of the pitch to the other and strike them? Like they're not a counter attack team, and if you let Lauren try and play through you, I think you give them the opportunity to grow in confidence. If we're talking about strategies for either side, I think the Blues need to take a leaf out of the book from Dungannon, and they need to hassle. They need to kind of get that press on them. But is that the type of strategy that Linfield can really do? I can't see the likes of Mulgrew or Shields hassling a Cricky Gallagher halfway in the opposition half.
No, I don't know whether we've got that in us either, to be honest. To be fair, Jamie McGrew's what 38, and he's probably not got the legs for it anymore. I don't think Jamie's had sort of mountains of pace for about 15 years, but he's still been one of the best players in the league. But um, yeah, it's a really difficult one. I can see how it's going to play out. I'm not looking forward to Monday night, to be quite honest. It screams, Linfield sitting back and just, you even look at the second half against Glenavon on Saturday just before Boxing Day. Like we were sitting very, very deep when you're playing second bottom in the league at home. And I don't think Linfield have the confidence in themselves going forward to even try and strike anything at all. So that's sort of where my worries would lie as a Linfield fan. For Monday coming up is that this sort of, maybe play a 5 or a 3 at the back, and then you just invite so much pressure on because you've got Kirk Miller on one side sort of playing this wing back role that is not his best role by far. He's one of the best wingers in the league. on the wing sort of thing. You've then got poor Ewan East, who has been sort of this converted into a right back and being forced to do, right back roles, right mid roles, right wing roles. Like if you were able to sort of see it from our position, um, on Boxing Day, it was so obvious that he wasn't able to do all those three roles at once. Any time that there was anything down that left hand side for Linfield, there was nobody there at all. No one even close to it. You had Mulgrew coming out of the centre midfield to sort of join as a left midfielder. He was obviously playing the left side of the centre midfield. Um, but it just wasn't working out, and I don't know how we're going to fix that in such a short period of time for Monday night's game against Larne.
It's a game where I could almost just chalk off. Like, do we even need to play the first half? Because I can't see anything big happening in it. He famously said, and then it's all going to be the last final 30 minutes. I think until McKendry gets subbed on, the game hasn't started. So I often talk about hot hands, and I need to see it from a team. I think I need to see a big performance from Larne, and the games are going to come at them thick and fast. I need to see something big. We had the Ghent performance. We've had the performance against some of the other sides in European qualifying. They need to announce their arrival onto this season, and I appreciate they've already got 3 points at Windsor. They need to strike now, not only from a points total in the table, belief from a momentum point of view. It could be a massive one. I'm going to be boring. I'm going to say it's 0-0. I don't think anybody breaks through, and Linfield will very much take that.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I see 0-0. As I said earlier, maybe a 1-1, but I would lean towards a 0-0. Sort of David Healy happy enough for that, I'd say.
It's an exciting evening because if you're not at the games, you'll actually be able to follow on the radio, which I will be on, but there's also a unique visualized element. So you'll be able to watch the Linfield Larne game, but you'll also be able to watch other goals go in just a few seconds after they happen. So it'll be radio meets TV or visualization or whatever, and you can enjoy it. A big game in my eyes is down at Shamrock Park, Portadown against Glentoran. This is a huge fixture again based on where they are in the league. Glentoran won out during the early period of the league, scoring late, almost creating a villain in Curry time. They scored late against Portadown, and they decided to be brined in it, and then they scored all these late goals for a number of weeks afterwards. Portadown duffed Glentoran at the Oval, striking when they needed to. But Glentoran come into this game. Yeah, they might not win a whole load of games back to back to back, but they're not getting taken out in the same way that Portadown did to them at the Oval. Without McCary, that's probably a big enough loss that I think Glentoran will come out of this with the 3 points. But that Shamrock Park pitch has not been a happy hunting ground for many. It was for Glentoran. Let's see how it is a couple of days after Boxing Day.
Both of those teams, no love lost between the two, of course. Big sort of rivalry between the two sets of fans. Both sort of coming off sort of bang average performances. Of course, Portadown losing, Glens getting that draw against the Blues. I think you've touched on it there, Peter. McKerry's absence might be the settler in this game. The Glens might just be able to sneak something. But again, as we said earlier, Glen striker, who you starting against Portadown? Who's your sort of outball? Who's your sort of rogue sort of sub that's coming on for them? It'll be a difficult one for both teams actually, but I can just see the Glens edging it personally. Maybe oof, I'm gonna go out and go all out. I'll say 2-1, 2-1 to the Glens, unfortunately.
Yeah, as much as Portadown have had good games against Cliftonville and Crusaders there, if I think that Glenavon were a bad matchup for Portadown because of a tiny bit of pace they had. I would say Connolly and Jenkins will strike fear. They do have Barry Top back, but I don't know what will happen when it comes to UKEC if he'll return to the side, and maybe Shea McCartney came off the bench. Will he start? Tough one. It would be, I think, a big statement from Nal Curry if he can get out of that game with some sort of result. But I just think based on what we've seen recently from Glentoran, I think they will have a sturdy enough backline and midfield to give them something to push on and get a goal from one of those nippy boys at the top of the pitch. I'm probably just going to say a straight up 2-0 to the Glens. Cliftonville, Dungannon Swifts, not the fixture the Reds wanted to see come up after the last few weeks.
Yeah, definitely not one that you'd be looking forward to on the fixture list coming up. Yeah, it's just the only sort of positive for Cliftonville is the solitude sort of aspect of this. That playing at home against Dungannon is a totally different game from playing away. That might be sort of a barometer for how things will go. Um, I think it's a big statement again. We did touch on it earlier on as to who the Cliftonville goalkeeper is going to be on Monday night. That could really be an eye opener. But it's a tough game for both teams. You know, Dungannon coming off a real high, whereas Cliftonville coming off a pretty big low after that performance up at Seaview. But it's just one of those ones where if Dungannon can manage to bring their home form on the road with them, it could be a really, really difficult evening for those Red fans up at Solitude.
Dungannon have not been a particularly fun side to play against. If you're a fan of the Reds, I'm thinking in the Irish Cup. I'm thinking a couple of league meetings as well, and some of those have happened at Solitude, and it's the fourth top six side that they've had to face off against in regards to, well, Crusaders were top six, but you know what I'm saying. So they're going against the second currently best side in the league. They're in decent form. They're coming off the back of a win. I think Dungannon are going to score early here, and I'm actually going to say 3-0 Dungannon.
Oh, that's a big one. That's big.
I think the early goal could just really put the cat amongst the pigeons there, and I think it's a similar zippy pitch up there at Solitude, and it's more a case of can Dungannon finish their chances rather than can they hold off Cliftonville, because Cliftonville are down a lot of players and Dungannon are high flying. So maybe 3-0's a bit too much, but I am very strongly backing the Swifts there.
I think I'll sort of go middle of the road here. I'll go with 1-1 draw. I don't think Scott will be hitting any shots after Boxing Day, but we'll see what happens.
It's the Stephen Baxter Barnstormer. We're running it back. Carrick Rangers playing against Crusaders. I think their earlier meeting in the season was it Taylor's Avenue as well. I mean, I like a lot what Carrick were able to do in making it difficult for absolutely everybody. But the way that you break through that back line, I feel, is by balls over the top, working the ball well, using that speed. And I think Jordan Stewart's going to be someone that some of those players at the back will find difficulty to deal with by just how well he can trap that ball close to his feet. I like this connection he's got with Offord. I actually am going to back the Crews to win this 2-1, but I wouldn't be surprised if Carrick Rangers put this game in a chokehold and it's a late goal from a Heatley or a Gibson or maybe even a Maculitis that can win out. This is very, very hard to predict.
Yeah, two teams that probably are happy enough with, well, obviously the Crews are very happy with the result in Boxing Day. Carrick obviously got that draw away at Inver Park despite the lack of goals from Lauren. It's just one of those places, as it's that old cliche, tough place to go, Peter. But it's just like we saw the Blues go up there on a Sunday afternoon this year and really, really struggle with Carrick sort of, that sort of really, really dogged defending and being able to just keep teams at arm's length and not let them sort of punish them. But when you manage to break through them, once or twice, it turns into sort of, you know what way the tide's turning. I think if the Crews get an early goal in the first half, it could really go their way on Monday night. But again, as you say, I would not be surprised to see, a Danny Gibson or a Neris Makulatis poking at the back post at the last minute or something ridiculous. So we'll give Crusaders the benefit of the doubt after a real good performance in Boxing Day. I'm gonna go 2-0 to Crews.
There's few matchups I've seen more over the past couple of years than Ballymena against Glenavon. It previously used to be such a tight little affair where those two teams were going for seventh or maybe a top six spot. It hasn't exactly been that in recent times. But you've got Ballymena, who were impressive enough in the first half against Coleraine. And remember, that was without Ben Kennedy and without Scott, without as well Carson. So they all come back into this game. I also thought Glenavon were quite sharp and were able to be a threat on the counter. So, watch out the likes of Glenn O'Sullivan and co. So I think this could be a rather entertaining back and forth game where there's lots of chances, very little goals, and probably Ballymena win out just by the one goal. I think it's 1-0, and it's a 50-50 on who I give it to.
As you said there, Peter, it's a really, really tight affair. Ballymena and Glenavon games have always been very entertaining over the years. There's one Ballymena fan in particular. I'd be texting every time that this game's on. He really, really hates playing Glenavon. Total sort of bogey team for him. Really, really doesn't like playing them. But as you say, this season's been really, really difficult for Glenavon. It's not been one of their finest campaigns. Ballymena, this sort of blowing very, very hot and very, very cold all of a sudden. Total sort of polar opposites. That's just sort of why they find themselves right in the middle of the table. Um, I agree with you. There could be moments of madness in this game, but I've gone 2-2 in this just based on how crazy this game can be sometimes.
Local Coleraine wraps up our game on Monday. I will be there at Lakeview Park. I was at this fixture maybe only, let's say, 5 weeks ago, and Coleraine duffed Loughgall. It was 4-0, and I was starting to get aboard that Coleraine hype train. I thought, wow, look at this free-flowing team. They look like a quite difficult team to break through. They're winning the balls in the middle of the park. They're just so feisty up top. That didn't work out. So I could see Coleraine coming up once again. Loughgall, have they learnt their lessons? Can they even deal with this front line of Coleraine and maybe I'd just have to succumb to a big defeat again? I think if you're Loughgall, time is slipping away, especially with this Glenavon team getting big points as well. So I'm sure if you're Loughgall, you got to aim for this to be a draw and maybe sneak a winner. But I just think with Shevlin and Glacken, you have an outlay, and it might only be 2-1, but I think Coleraine will sneak the points, and they should get the points, really.
Yeah, if you're a Korean fan heading down to that, you're really, really expecting to come home with 3 points. Anything but 3 points for Korean is a real sort of dampener on your New Year's roundup celebrations. But I just don't see anything but a win for Korean. Like maybe a sneaky goal, just like we saw on Boxing Day for Loughgall, might set the cat amongst the pigeons and put sort of Korean into this sort of bit of a flap. We saw them at Windsor 2 weeks ago, and they didn't really impress me. But that's obviously against a different end of the table. I think Coleraine, as we say, should have it in them. I'm saying 3-1 Coleraine, and probably, something silly to happen for Loughgall to concede a late one.
So that's our lot for the final top flight Irish League fixtures of 2024. This is the final kicking match episode of 2024. What a good boy I've been to you recently, giving you a podcast during the break. I also then gave you one, Christmas Eve there, which focused on some of the games, but also had a big stonking part that talked about the January transfer window, so you can dive into that if you're looking some thing to listen to over the next while. It hopefully shouldn't be too dated there. Looking, and I think I talked about this last week, looking at the scheduling, the games on Monday, and then Tuesday's New Year's Eve, and then, between that, I've got things to be at, and then New Year's Day, good luck. Thursday on the 2nd, at that point, you're kind of stuck in between last week and the week ahead and all the rest. So things may change, but there was a strong chance this is it's definitely the last podcast of the year, but it might be the last podcast until the Irish Cup games happen. So they're happening, let's call it, not next Saturday, so they're starting from Friday the 3rd. I will not go through these individually, but the pick of the round is being played on the the Friday night the 3rd. It's the Welders against Glentoran down at the Blanchflower. Outside of that, no big games between top tier sides match up together, but you have some interesting fixtures, as you always get on one of the best days of the year in regards to the 5th round Irish Cup day. You've got Belfast Celtic, Polo Park, Knockbreda against Crusaders, Anna United against Portadown, proper big Portadown battle that one is, and I don't think the Ports have a great record against Anna based on what happened to them last term. Ballymacash against Ballymallard, Ballymena against Ards, Bangor Newington, Carrick Newry, that's where I will be at. A nice meeting of obviously Newry's in the top flight last year, not going great guns this year. Cliftonville Banbridge Rangers, that's a proper top division against the lower ranked side. Corey and Armagh City could be a tricky fixture that. Dollingstown, Ballyclare, Dungannon against Rathryland Rangers. Glenavon, Dundallah, I think I have an eye on that as maybe shock territory. Institute Loughgall also in the shock zone. Limavady against Larne, and then Linfield against Wellington Rec. Surely Linfield aren't nervous. Linfield always get a good draw, it feels like, on 5th round day, no?
Yeah, we always end up sort of making a mess of it. We nearly bottled it against Warren Point a couple of years ago,
That is very true.
which is very stuck in my mind as a really bad game. But yeah, I can't see any issues there. Really looking forward to that Welders Glens game. That should be a really tight affair down at the Blanche, as it is locally called. But yeah, it should be a really good one. That gonna try and head down to that myself. Get to that, and then obviously up to Windsor on the Saturday. Another sort of note, I'd say you might be slightly surprised by Ballymacash against Ballymallard. That looks sort of like a tight enough tie, for me anyway. Bangor Newington, that could be a real thumping for Newington the way Bangor are playing, but guess we'll have to just wait and see.
Yeah, I think Welsh Glens, Annie United, Portadown, I think Ballymacash, Ballinamallard.
Glenavon Dundela as well. You know, Glenavon obviously beaten by Dundela's local rivals in the 5th round a couple of years ago. That was maybe the 6th round. That was the 6th round.
Yeah, it was.
The Welders beat Glenavon down at Rugby Park, so it could be a real tough one to crack that. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Mark, I think we're all very thankful for you giving up your spare time over this little festive break. How was the big day for you?
Yeah, good, all nice and quiet. Lots of turkey, lots of nice presents. So well looked after and well rested going into the new year, hopefully.
And of course, everyone that listens to this podcast, 25th of December, that was a big day in the calendar. The 3rd, 4th of January, big day because of Irish Cup Day. Of course, the next big date in everybody's calendar is going to be Friday, the 21st of March, 2025. The venue, Pog Uglies, Kicking Match Live. You already signed, sealed, and delivered to being there, Mr. McGuiggan?
Yeah, I'm signed, sealed, delivered. I'm definitely going to be there. I'm really looking forward to catching up with some of the around the grounds guys, and of course yourself. So it should be a good night. Looking forward to it.
Well, of course, just like you did, anybody else can go get your tickets right now. Use all that Christmas money that might be lingering around. Go find the page on the social media accounts and you can find a ticket, Eventbrite. I'm selling it, so don't be stressed about it. Give me a message if there's any drama. Thank you to all the people that have bought tickets so far. As well as that, plenty of you listened to Kicking Match on Christmas Day, so thank you. And that was, I hope you had a nice day, regardless of how you spent it, if it was with me and co, or if not. But Mark, thank you very much for dropping by.
Yeah, no, not a problem at all. Pleasure as always, sir.
Thank you so much, and everybody else, see you next time. And that is it, officially all over for another year. Thank you very much for supporting the podcast in its 3rd calendar year of being a thing. If you're new here, you're very welcome in. If you want to make yourself at home, you can do that by following me on Instagram, Facebook, and or Twitter. It's at Kicking Match on all of those things. You may have got yourself a very nice and snazzy little smart speaker for Christmas. If you have, why not test it out? Why not try little feature of listening to this podcast hands free? You just ask your smart speaker to please play Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast. And of course, if you want to help, you want to give a wee Christmas gift to me and as well to yourself, tickets are of course available for the very first Kicking Match Live. That's next year in March, Friday the 21st at Pog Uglies in Belfast. Hope you're keeping well. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the new year.